Hello and welcome to the programme. We're at the Tiger Conference organised by the Kiev Post, and this year's theme is Ukraine's innovative future and how to drive this forward. And I'm pleased to say joining us right now is Florian Marcus. He is an analyst at the Estonia Briefing Centre. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
So it's really interesting what you do, your line of work. You're involved in making sure that citizens can access government services most accessibly, so to speak. So how can this be done, and how can Ukraine perhaps take some of the lessons that Estonia has implemented and use it in their own system?
So first of all, I should say that Estonia is on a very good path already, because it has many of the fundamental factors that you need for digitalization to work properly. So an electronic identity, a data exchange layer so that the different ministries and authorities can talk to each other. So how do we make the government services as user-friendly as possible, I guess is the question. First of all, make them easy to understand so that, if possible, they become one-click operations. Especially this is possible if a government already has certain types of data about you. So, for example, if you need to enlist in the military for the mandatory service or something, if government already has a medical certificate about you, why would you have to go to the doctor again and have a paper that you then transmit to some other authority, if they could just be allowed, for this one occasion, to transfer that document digitally between themselves? So these are very simple things where we can solve people's problems and cut down administrative time. One more step would be to offer proactive government services, so that if government knows that you are entitled to a service, that government approaches you. So, for example, if a child is born and the doctor registers the birth of the child, the baby now has a personal code in Estonia, why doesn't the government just approach the parents online with a notification saying, congratulations on the birth of your child, to which bank account do you want the child support money? This is actually what was implemented in Estonia 1 month ago. So this is the first of what we call proactive government services.
That's a really interesting example as well, because as you said, a lot of citizens have to go to the government agencies to really carry out these different sort of transactions, you could say, or other communication. How in Estonia does the government make sure that it's accessible to everyone? Because it's okay, say for example, if we talk about Ukraine, in Kiev, a lot of people are technologically minded, they have smartphones, we can go to internet cafes, there's digital access, Wi-Fi, this sort of thing. But if we're in more rural areas, it's a bit more of a challenge, there's fewer facilities. So how in Estonia does that affect the way that the government rolls out these schemes?
It turns out that also in Estonia we do have a rural population, so of course we struggle with the same situation. And I think the truth is here that you have to go through a quite costly and time-intensive education process. This is what Estonia did in the late 90s and early 2000s, which basically was just explaining to not just the elderly but also people with disabilities, the poorer, the less educated, to explain to them, this is a browser, this is a mouse click, this is how you open a Word document. And once you make them understand how you run or how you use a computer properly, then it is all about, first of all, offering services that solve people's problems, so like actual services that they want to use on a daily basis perhaps, or ideally and making them as user-friendly as possible, whether it's one-click or proactive.
So it means keeping it simple.
Correct, yes. If you just digitalize a process, but it's still the same process, people do not care about doing things online. If paying your taxes on paper takes 5 hours and it takes 5 hours online, people will not do it. Yeah. But if you say, on paper it takes 5 hours, but online in Estonia, the income tax declaration takes 3 minutes on average, because it's all pre-calculated, and then they just say, do you agree? Now that's a very user-friendly service, and that's why in Estonia 96% of income tax declarations are filed online.
Oh wow. And for years I've been trying to teach my grandma how to use a computer. So if there are grandmas in Estonia who know how to do this, then I think the government have done an excellent job. Let's talk about the benefits. Should there be incentives for people to use these online services rather than the sort of traditional ways of, say, filling out tax returns, apart from saving time? Can there be economic benefits for example?
So I would say that primarily the time-saving aspect, of course, is the most important one, because you no longer have to queue. You don't even have to do it while the government office is open, because you can do it 24/7 location independently. In Estonia, there were some other aspects to this as well. In 1999, the online tax declaration was introduced, which meant that people who would declare their taxes online, yes, it was easier for them to do it, but also they would receive the reimbursements or the payback from the government a lot more quickly than those people who submitted it on paper.
So that was the incentive?
Right, so that's a good start. In some spheres, the government has also chosen to make things cheaper, because government saves money with digitalizing the process as well. To give you one example, registering a license plate online and having it sent via mail to your home address, so you don't have to go to any government authority. That costs around, I believe, 40 euros. If you do it in person at the authority, it takes around 55 to 60 euros. So that's it's not crippling cost increase if you do it physically, but you will notice the difference if you continue to do everything in person. And I think the realization is, if you make those things easier to use as well, and add the time and the cost benefit, people are bound to use the online service.
Are people quite worried about security?
Security, yes.
Now, when we hear of cyber attacks, and this is the new sort of, I mean, we talk about, say, Russia's war in Ukraine, but this is a form of hybrid wars, cyber attacks. So how in Estonia is the sort of confidence given to the people that their data is secure?
So Estonia is, of course, no stranger to cyber attacks. We had one by a nation state that shall not be named in 2007. And the realization there was that overall the system was secure. Now, nothing is 100% unhackable. Servers are not, paper is not. You can burn paper, you can copy paper, you can throw it away, you can take it home. So that is also manipulable in that way. The cybersecurity side in Estonia is strengthened through several points. First of all, we secure some critical data through the blockchain, not stored on the blockchain, very important legal distinction. We employ white hat hackers, so we pay people to try to crack the government databases. They cannot. And of course, we pay our cyber specialists in the government also quite well, and the government has served as an attractive employer for that community.
And that must also change the skill set of people as well, because my next question was going to be, in Ukraine, it's renowned for bureaucracy, and bureaucracy employs people. So how does it transform from people sort of working with paper to people working with computers, and is there a fears that efficiency means sort of unemployment perhaps for people?
I think this is one of the biggest misconceptions about digitalization. So the realization here must be that there is not a single government official that, I don't know, puts stamps on letters all day, every day. It's rather that this sort of bureaucracy side, it takes maybe 5% of everyone's workday, right? We all send out some mail at some point. But these 5%, they are eliminated for everyone in Estonia. So actually the percentage of people working in the public sector in Estonia is just a tiny fraction higher than EU average, which was a bit surprising. But it's just that the people that work in the public sector can focus on things that require human input, whereas sending mail or forwarding a document or reprocessing a document that has already been processed by another person, those things do not require human interaction, and those things have been automated or digitalized in Estonia.
So it's all about efficiency, really, right, in the end.
And making the work environment more attractive for people as well, because no one fancies putting stamps on mail or forwarding documents all day.
Well, when these sort of foreign businesses and perhaps even the governments, they come to Estonia for advice, you're involved, it says here, in making sure that they have the metrics and the data to really make comparisons and use perhaps Estonia's model to advance their own interests. So what sort of data and metrics are they looking at?
So I think this is something where we still have to rework the narrative a tiny bit. What many countries think is the most important thing is to have as many services online as possible. Now, I would say what's important is to have as few services as possible online, but those that solve all the problems at the same time. So if you can make 7 steps in 1 step, that would be amazing. So automation behind the digital sphere.
So can you give an example?
So for example, if I have to apply for a driver's license, first of all, it would be great to apply for that online, but also for the medical certificate to be transferred directly to the authority so that they don't have to ask me anymore. Maybe that I can also book an appointment for the theoretical test. Then maybe that the handing out of the driver's license could be digitalized, so automated online. Another step would be to have it so that you don't actually need a physical driver's license card, which is the case in Estonia. I use my ID card. Right. So the information that I have the right to drive is connected to my personal code, which is connected to my electronic ID. So exactly. So I don't have a driver's license in Estonia. I don't have a healthcare card or anything like that. I only use my electronic ID. So digitalization can put all these things together into one card foundation if you want it to be that way.
And are there other misconceptions that you can think of when people come to the Estonia Briefing Centre? What do these foreign delegations think, and what sort of other perceptions are there that are wrong?
So first of all, that there is a decrease in privacy when we're talking about digitalization. I would say that can be the case if you want it to be the case. So of course, digitalization is always a tool, and the question is, what does the human do with it? If you want to create an authoritarian state with it, then yeah, digitalization is a wonderful tool, but you can also use it for good. In Estonia, we've got something called the data tracker. So inside the state portal, every single resident and citizen can see who has looked at their data, so from what government authority, for what reason, when, and so on. Which obviously creates a lot of trust, and this gives some certainty that you do not have with paper, because if I'm a doctor, but I'm not your doctor, and I'm curious about your information, your medical data. In most countries, you would not find out that I have ever looked at your data because it might be on paper or in some sort of internal hospital system. Whereas in Estonia, I would see, because you logged in with your ID card as a doctor, that you looked at this part of my data at this point in time in that context. So digitalization can create a lot more transparency and privacy than more traditional means.
When we talk about data, we think of sort of things that we cannot see, but in the panel, they were talking about food and digital as well. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
So I would give two examples. First of all, this is one thing where blockchain can be very useful to verify the validity or the trustworthiness of a food production chain. For example, if I am a wine producer and I want to be sure that there can be no fake wine with my brand out there, because I put into the blockchain who was the grape producer in what area, who was transported to what facility, who processed the grapes, and so on. So if you have a transparent process chain stored in the blockchain, that makes it more reliable, that you can run that code and say, this is really the real wine that I want to buy. Yeah. Another good example, maybe for the area of agriculture, is that in the EU we've got some structural funds for farmers who mow their fields a certain number of times per year. Now, what used to happen in Estonia is that we would have just people on patrols going out to the different farmers and checking, did you mow your field recently or not? So do you get the funds or not? This can be done with drones, so satellite images, and machine learning. Yeah. So this has a success rate or correctness rate of around 90% at the moment. For the rest, where there is uncertainty, of course, you still send out humans, but you just saved 90% of all trips. So in different ways, digitalization can make your life easier.
Perfect. Well, on that note, thank you very much for joining us. It's been incredibly interesting talking to you today, and hopefully we'll see you back in Ukraine again soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
So that was Florian Marcus. He's an analyst at the Estonia Briefing Centre. You've been watching a special edition of Head to Head on UATV from the Tiger Conference organised by the Kiev Post.